The Cleveland Guardians have been mostly quiet this offseason, and we're all bored. So today we're going to play GM. We're going to make some moves for them and see who improves the team more.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Guardians fans? Thanks for hanging out with us for the next half hour on another edition here of Locked On Guardians, recorded for December 17th, 2025. We're the only daily podcast that covers your Cleveland Guardians from the majors, the minors, the draft, and everything in between. Proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. I'm Justin Lada, one of your two co-hosts for the last 3 years and counting. If you're new here, my friend and coach Jeff Ellis, who's off today, and I've spent 18 years covering the Guardians minor league farm system as a prospect writer and editor. And I appreciate you hanging out with me and making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever you get podcasts. Shout out to all of our everydayers returning in the doldrums of winter when nothing is going on for the Guardians and sticking with us on our 3-day-a-week schedule until spring training or until the Guardians decide to make some moves of their own. Shout out to all of our everydayers as well in the club, all of our insiders, all of our commenters. You guys are what makes this thing run. Let's get into it today. We're going to go over some trade ideas I think the Guardians should pull the trigger on, because I am going to sit in Chris Antonetti's chair this episode for the offseason. We're going to make some trades. We're going to go through a list of free agents I would sign for the Guardians. You're going to evaluate my offseason moves. Tell me what you think. We're going to keep track of these. We're going to compare them and track them throughout the year. And in the final segment, we'll go through a few more names being thrown out there that people should know, the ones people should forget about. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action during the NFL season, visit FanDuel.com to place your NFL live bets all season long. So I think it's a foregone conclusion at this point for the Guardians, for the most part, that the most impact they're going to be able to have on their roster going into 2027 is going to be through trades. Free agency is quite picked over at this point. They're not going to play in the upper bounds of free agency. We know that. They've already dug into the low cost, high upside guys like Connor Brogdon, Colin Holderman. They took Peyton Pallette. They have not added a hitter yet this offseason externally. I think they will at some point, whether that's through free agency or a trade. The point is they need to. They cannot go into 2026 as the roster they have now. I don't think the Zips projections came out for Fangraphs on Tuesday, the 16th, and it was ugly. Now, it's probably worse last year, if we're being honest. And things were a disaster until kind of September. I shouldn't say disaster. They were disaster in July. And they still managed to win the division. And I still think this roster as it sits probably is a team that's going to be around 500 and maybe could win 88 games. And that still should be good enough for the division in the American League Central. It won't go beyond that because the roster is still imperfect. Now, you guys can add DeLauder and Bazana and think that is going to be enough, but banking on rookies, banking on DeLauder staying healthy, banking on Valera staying healthy, banking anything on Nolan Jones and all the other cast of characters they have in the outfield doesn't make any sense to me. I think if you want to be a true contender in the American League, I think you have to add a bat externally. I think they still need to add bullpen help. They've said they needed to add bullpen help. So let's start with trades. Here are the trades I would look at for Cleveland. I would pull the trigger on, and I'll tell you exactly who I'm trading, and we'll keep track of this as we go along during the offseason into 2026. So according to Bob Nightingale of USA Today, so take that with a grain of salt because usually the things he says end up being backwards. He says the Diamondbacks are interested in Alex Bregman. So if they do that, I think that makes it more likely they're going to trade Ketel Marte, which is kind of odd because Ketel Marte is going to make $15 million this year. And I think it moves up to $17 million next year. Bregman and Marte are the same age. So I'm not sure why you would sign Bregman, who is projected to get $31 million a year, about 155 is the projections I've seen, for twice the money, same age. That says a lot about Marte. And, I've seen multiple people talk about clubhouse things and not necessarily character things, but just stuff that's been happening over in Arizona with him. And I do think if they were to sign Alex Bregman so they could trade Ketel Marte, it probably improves your team, but it's also strange that you wouldn't add pitching another way. Now, they don't have another way to add pitching, but you're doubling the salary for Marte. So you're paying him half more and using him for a pitcher. So that is a concern. But I do think a Marte trade is possible for Arizona at this point. I'm not saying it's likely, but I think it's more possible than it has been. And we're going to look at Cleveland's payroll in 2026 for a lot of this experiment, because I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to sign Kyle Tucker and Bo Bichette and all those other guys to this roster. I'm going to play within the normal rules and bounds of the Guardians. So their projected salary right now for 2026 looks at about $88 million when you figure in they still have to pay the reliever, who will not be named, contract, if that's happening, all projected arbitration figures, all the pre-arbitration salaries, and that also includes money that they're remaining. They'll have to pay Bieber, Straw, and Trevor Stephan. Last year, Cleveland's payroll, 2025, was $102 million at the end of the year, which was $2 million less than their final payroll in 2024. Now, I don't believe Cleveland is going to get out of a negotiation for Marte without including Gavin Williams. I just don't see Arizona agreeing to center a package for Marte around Slade Ciccone or Parker Messick, Joey Cantillo. They want a guy who can start a playoff game. And I know Ciccone did start a playoff game, but I think they want a guy like Gavin Williams. And that would be enough for one. I think Gavin Williams from Marte is straight up is enough. He's in his last year of arbitration. He's going to close to $1 million. So essentially that'd be Cleveland adding $14 million to their payroll if you subtract Marte, or if you subtract Williams' salary and add in Marte's. And that would put them at 102 on the dot. So if they make that move and don't want to raise payroll from 2025, that is pretty much the end of the offseason. You add Ketel Marte. Great move. You could add some minor league free agents from there. That's it. But I think given what it would take in a return for Marte, the added cost, and some of the other stuff we hear are, issues. I don't even know what they are, if they're true, but there's been enough talk about it. And the Diamondbacks signaling this, I think, is enough. I'm officially closing the door on a Ketel Marte trade. Unless Cleveland finds a way to say, hey, you got to take Nolan Jones and free up a little more money, which I don't understand why they're going to pay him $2 million anyway, but that is where we're at. So that really does leave one move left in my mind for Cleveland, and that's the obvious one. It's Brendan Donovan. I don't think there's another way for them to add to their lineup through a trade. We have talked about Jesus Sanchez from the Astros. We've talked about, I know Jeff has talked about Seiya Suzuki from the Cubs. However, Suzuki is a DH, so that limits him a little bit. And you could also talk about, even from the Cardinals, Lars Nootbaar, because this team does need outfield help. But I think Brendan Donovan makes the most sense. It's going to be a competitive market. A lot of teams are around him. We've seen some of the rumors out there with the Giants and the Mariners supposedly in the lead over the weekend. Nothing materialized. We saw that the names that were thrown out there by Katie Wu of The Athletic, who now covers the Dodgers, previously covered the Cardinals, were Lazaro Montes and Jurangelo Saintja of the Mariners. Montes is a 20-year-old power hitter in Double-A who's an outfielder and has some strikeout issues, but has a ton of power. Is a top 30 prospect in baseball. And Jurangelo Saintja is obviously a switch pitcher from college who is better as a right-hander, and has some more command concerns, might be a reliever, but is a really interesting arm. So that being said, that seems like a bit of an overpay. It's a little bit pricey for Brendan Donovan, but I'm willing, I think, to dive in and make an offer for Brendan Donovan. I'm going to tell you who that offer is next. I'll tell you who else I'd trade for. I'll give you some free agent names later in the show. We'll talk about some other rumors to ignore coming up on the rest of this Bo GM edition of Locked On Guardians. If you're an NFL fan, you know how fast NFL Sundays can move, because one big play can alter the entire game. That is what makes live betting on FanDuel so exciting, because you're not just watching the game, you're reacting in real time, having good, responsible, fun, With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds during every drive, every momentum swing of the game, every highlight moment can be more exciting because those live moments are best when the game starts to shift. You see a receiver making a big catch, a quarterback with a run, running back, a defensive turnover, all that fun stuff. The Browns, though, they are getting 10 from the Bills. The Bills are going to blow them out, honestly. Cavs are back in action, giving up 5 to the Bulls, which seems impossible given how bad the Cavs have played. And the Guardians, they're going in the wrong direction right now. Plus 1,300 to win the American League. So the odds are going in the other direction. If you feel good about their American League chances, be a good time to get in on that. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action all season long, visit FanDuel.com. Place your live NFL bets all season. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so appreciate you all taking the time on Locked On Guardians, making us your first listen to every day, whatever it is that you get podcasts. And thank you for all making us the #1 sports podcast network. Couldn't be here without you doing this every day. To all of everydayers and all the people who are sticking with us. You guys already live your team, your Cleveland Guardians, every single day. Now you can take up your ad-free listening experience up a level by joining the Everydayer Club. You get exclusive access to Locked On Guardians with no interruptions, member-only Discord access as well. Some other perks included and more for just $5 a month or $50 a year. You can go and head over to LockedOnGuardians.supercast.com or check out the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, let's get into the Brendan Donovan deal for Cleveland. This is the deal I am making. That match to me, Montez and Saincha, I think if you want to compare it to Cleveland, it's probably something like, if it's not Cal Steven, it's probably Joey Okie. I think it's more like Cal Steven, even though I think Saincha's a reliever. And probably Ralphie Velasquez. So I'm not going to do that deal. I'm not including Ralphie for a Brendan Donovan. He doesn't add enough power to me. He only has 2 years of control. As much as I like him, there are things he's limited on. So to sweeten the pot, I would give the Cardinals a starter now. I would give up Logan Allen, who does have value because of his control, club control, cheapness, and has been proven to be a solid back-end starter. I mean, Adrian Hauser got 2 years, $22 million today. And I think him and Allen are very similar, except for Hauser, probably better velocity, but the stuff is similar, and Allen's been pretty durable and, made some improvements from 2024 to 2025. So I think adding Allen to me allows you to drop Velasquez from the deal and replace him with, I think, a Juan Burrito if they want someone closer to the big leagues. Or you can offer them a Jason Chourio who has more upside and doesn't have obviously Montez's power, but is a higher level prospect. So I think this is more of a quantity over quality trade. So I don't know if the Cardinals necessarily want that. I would be interested in Steven and Allen in that trade if a Brito and Chourio gets it done. And you can also put in, Schneemann or Martinez to get the deal over the finish line because Schneemann ends up being redundant. However, if I were to do that, I would also be asking for JoJo Romero. He's set to make $4.4 million as a rental reliever. The Cardinals could hold on him into the season to the deadline, but I think Cleveland should trade for him and have him for the full season and flip him at the deadline if they need to. And again, I'd say I'd put Schneemann or Martinez in the deal to grab Romero. They can pick, but I prefer to put Schneemann to the offer. So that is Logan Allen, Cal Steven, and Jason Chourio and Daniel Schneemann for Brendan Donovan and JoJo Romero. So you're giving up a starting pitcher, some of your depth at pitcher. You're giving up Jason Chourio and Daniel Schneemann, who becomes redundant. You're getting Brendan Donovan for 2 years, 1 year of JoJo Romero. So Donovan's going to get $5.75 million this year at the $88 million Cleveland's currently at. That pushes them to about $94 million. JoJo Romero, $4.4 million. That's going to push them a little bit higher. Obviously, that's going to push them to $98 million. So if they want to stay under the previous year's payroll and be around $100 million, that might be done. However, I think you're subtracting $2 million in salary from Allen and Schneemann and their minimums. So you're about $96 million. That keeps them under last year's salary, and that gives them room to get a free agent, I think. However, just one. So let's talk about free agents. Going back to the projected payroll at $88 million, if you add in arbitration figures, pre-arb, and again, that's also with the closer who will not be named on the books. I think we can get them to $100 million and not go over last year's figures. The Guardians say they want to add more relief help. They've already signed Brogdon. They've already signed Holderman. They've selected Peyton Pellet. All those guys have been making pretty much the minimum. And Holderman's got options. Consider that the Guardians bullpen last year threw 554 innings. Shockingly, that was the second least innings in baseball. However, they threw 623 in 2024. And the reason they were able to keep the bullpen roll so shortened and down this year was because of their well-oiled six-man rotation in September. Can't do that in April through August. So Jacob Junis is not on the roster right now. He threw 66 and 2/3 innings, second most. And I don't believe Brogdon and Holderman can fill that void. I just don't see them. Colby Allard threw 57 and 2/3 innings. He's not coming back. I think you can get those innings from Brogdon and Holderman. So that is probably a wash there, even though those guys are making more than Allard. So they definitely need more. Let's get more. I think two more relievers. So one of them could be Romero. If they're not, if it's Romero, I would be interested in getting Hunter Harvey. I just saw that Jordan Romano, a two-time All-Star, got $2 million from the Angels, coming off a mostly healthy season, but a bad one. Harvey has been hurt for the last 2 years. His salary last year was $3.5 million. So I think if you give Hunter Harvey, who's got some of the best stuff plus numbers on the free agent market right now, of anybody, $3 million in incentives a year, I think you can add that. So you'd have a bullpen of Smith, Gaddis, Heron, Sobrowski, Romero, Harvey. I think there you could do a lot of things along with Brogdon, Holderman, and Pellet. I think you could do a lot of things with that bullpen. Normally, I'd be against buying free agent relievers, but because the closer who will not be named is no longer here, I think long term, I think Cleveland wants to be able to get Cade Smith back to the fireman role. I think they need to have another closer available, and that keeps the cost of Cade Smith down long term. So this might be cheating a little bit, but Class A, I said his name. Darn it. Got to restart the whole podcast. No, he was set to make $6.4 million in 2026. So I don't know for sure if Cleveland will be off hook for a salary. They should be, because they've said they've already planned to not have him and Ortiz going forward. We're not going to know this, and they're not going to know this until spring training, I think, which is, a pain because that affects Cleveland's offseason planning. I think it's not fair to make them not know what their salary situation is going to be, because for $6.4 million is a big chunk of change for this organization. So between Class A and Ortiz, you're talking about $7 million Cleveland could be playing with if they get that money off the books. There's no chance either of these two guys are playing for them in 2026. There's just not. Even if somehow they're cleared and the case is dropped, I mean, I guess that would maybe consider Cleveland they were innocent until proven guilty. I guess we'll see. Let's just say that they're suspended and not banned. I don't know. I think it's even possible too. But Cleveland already went ahead and took Emmanuel Clase's poster down from downtown. So that tells me that he is not coming back to this organization one way or the other at this point. So I would have to, it's hard to operate this way, but I'd have to consider the fact that his salary is not counting towards the 2026 payroll. Might be cheating a little bit, but I am going to allocate that salary to somebody else as a bullpen option. I'll tell you who that's going to be coming up in just a second. Thank you for making us your first listen to Everybody Get Podcasts. If you need more Guardians baseball talk, be sure to keep up with us all off season long. Hit the bell on YouTube so you get notified of when episodes go live, and make sure you auto download all the podcasts on your audio platforms so we stay with you in your feed wherever you go. If you're behind on some episodes, that lets you catch up, lets you take us to the gym, to walk your dog, driving to work, all that kind of stuff. It keeps us in your feed during the holiday season. You can also follow us on social media, and you can still join the Insiders group as well, in addition to the Everydayer Club, by going to subtext.com/locked-on Guardians. That is still an option. All right. So here's who I am allocating Class A salary to, and it's Luke Weaver. So Luke Weaver is projected to get 2 years, $14 million from Fangraphs. I think that's pretty reasonable given his experience. He's only got one breakout year, 2024, and he had some struggles in 2025. I do think in order to land him, Cleveland has to promise him the closer's role. I don't think they're going to get him any other way. There has been some talk about him wanting to go back to being a starter, but according to reports, nobody has approached him about going back to that role. So I think if you want to get him as a reliever, you have to tell him he's going to be the closer. And I think you could go as high as $8 million for Luke Weaver. 217, 214. I think you can go 1.8. So that's 2.8. That's 2.19. And I think you want to maybe include an opt out there, because if he has a great 2026 season, he can go back on the market in 2027, or he can opt back in for 2027 if he thinks the market won't be that good. So Luke Weaver, just to go back over some of that stuff as well, Luke Weaver had some of the best in-zone whiff rates in the Yankees bullpen last year. And that included guys like David Bednar, Camilo Duvall, Fernando Cruz. And he has been really good in the zone. And his ERA did jump from 289 to 362 last year, but was still 91st percentile in chase rate, 89th percentile in whiff rate. And his fielding independent pitching did go to 442. However, it was 265 before his hamstring issue in late May. When he returned in June is when things started to fall for him. And then he had some issues with pitch tipping, which hurt his confidence and mechanics. So I think Cleveland's a great place to get him back on track. You offer him a little bit more than his projection. You give him an option to opt in or opt out and let him go back onto the market, and you fix him. And you guys take a 1-year gamble with some insurance for him, and you promise him the closer role. Then you have a great bullpen of Weaver and possibly Hunter Harvey, Cade Smith, Hunter Gaddis, as well as, other guys I talked about too before. That's a really good bullpen. That gives them $11 million between Harvey and Weaver. That puts them at $99 million for the year. That's still $3 million less than what they spent a year ago. So, and assuming that Class A salary comes off the books, that takes them down to $92.6 million. And if we have that, we can add another hitter. So Fangraphs has Rob Refsnyder at 1 year, $5 million. Most places are about the same. That's a great deal for Cleveland. And he's a really good lefty masher. He plays the outfield. He definitely can play the Ryan Rayburn or Brandon Guyer role. So we talked about earlier how Brendan Donovan's salary is 5.75. When you add in Weaver and Harvey to Donovan, that puts them at $103 million. That's $1 million more than the 2025 payroll. And I'm going to leave that for now. But I think the caveat now is you have to choose between adding Donovan and Romero from the Cardinals, along with Hunter Harvey, and skipping out on Luke Weaver. Or you could drop Romero from the deal with the Cardinals, get Brendan Donovan, add Luke Weaver, and then sign Rob Refsnyder. And if you ask me, I would rather have Donovan, Weaver, Harvey, and Refsnyder. I would dump Romero out of the poll, that whole list. So that puts them right around last year's payroll. And honestly, if they didn't get Harvey, I think I do want Hunter Harvey, but if they got just Weaver, I'd be fine with that too. So quickly to recap, I chose Donovan for Allen, Cal Steven, and Daniel Schneemann, and then signing Weaver, Harvey, and Refsnyder. That's 3 free agents. And adding 2 bats, including Donovan and Refsnyder. You can play Donovan at second base. He can hit second between Ramirez and Kwan. You can use Refsnyder in the outfield as a left-handed platoon hitter for 1 year. 1 year platoon bat doesn't block anybody. So your outfield for this year is Kwan, DeLauder, Refsnyder, Valera, and then I guess we can include Jones. That gives you some options and some balance. There's a real nice floor there. Donovan doesn't block anybody except for maybe Gablarius, who I think Cleveland is signaling they're probably going to go with Rocchio more anyway, based on Vote's comments. So if and when Bazana busts his way up to the major leagues, well, guess what? Brendan Donovan can also play the outfield. He can also play some shortstop. There's always going to be room for him other places. Or, if you say, what? Rob Refsnyder's doing a great job. DeLauder's healthy. Valera's kicking butt. And Bazana's up, and we like Rocchio. Oh, darn, you have too many good hitters. Well, we can always flip Brendan Donovan for something we need. Or, doesn't hurt to have a good bench. Brendan Donovan would be an expensive upgrade over Daniel Sheeman, but heck, he is a heck of a bench player. So your bullpen is also then Weaver, Smith, Gaddis, Sabrowski, Vesta, Heron, Peyton Pallette, possibly Harvey, Holderman, or it's possibly Romero instead of Harvey. Your rotation is Williams, Bybee, Ciccone, Messick, and Cantillo. I know you've lost Allen and Cal Steven. That's tough. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to trade. We're going to track these trades. Let me know what you think of my scenarios, how you think my moves are fit to make the team better. We're going to track these trades. I'm going to put I have these down on paper. If Donovan and Romero get traded, we're going to track for who and their performances versus what Cleveland could do. We'll track how much money Hunter Harvey gets, Luke Weaver, Rob Refsnyder versus the offers I put on the table. And then we'll track how they perform versus who the Guardians put in that place. And we'll see who had the better offseason. You definitely want to let me know in the comments what you think of my offseason. Feel free to also play along at home and play armchair GM to what moves. Let's talk about some other names, other transactions that happened recently in order to wrap up today's episode. So the Phillies have signed Adolis Garcia to a $10 million 1-year deal. I think that's a bad signing. Technically, he's an upgrade for the Guardians over what they had in the outfield last year. That is true. However, I think it's more of a D to a F to a D. Like the whole idea of what I just did here in this whole experiment was outside of Weaver and Harvey, I took, Schneemann to basically Donovan with some other pieces. I took, I added Romero. I added Refsnyder. Those are F's to C moves, I think. I think Weaver could be even higher if he returns to 2024 form. Adolis Garcia had an 83 WRC plus last year. And I know everybody wants to look at, he had 31 home runs in 2021. He was the 39 home runs in 2023 and was the World Series MVP. Well, the problem is the last 2 years, his on base has gone down. His ability to walk has gone down. His slugging percentage has gone down. His home runs have gone down. Still a solid defender in right field. He's 32. He's going to turn 33 in March. Guys do not get better at that age. You don't all of a sudden go from a guy who hits 39 home runs and wins a World Series MVP to declining the next 2 years. And then all of a sudden having maybe you have a dead cat bounce here. Maybe. That'd be great for Cleveland, but at $10 million, I'm not taking that chance. There is nothing in that profile to me that suggests he's going to turn things around. There's too much chase and whiff. There's too much whiff in the zone. There's the exit velocity is going down. The bat speed's still there. It's not a good fit. And because they signed Adolis Garcia in Philadelphia, that means everybody knows they want to move Nick Castellanos, which wasn't really a secret before. And I have less than zero interest in bringing Nick Castellanos to Cleveland because the Phillies are willing to pay money to send him to another team, okay? They are literally willing to say, we will eat X amount of dollars. Let me look at the salary real quick. He is going to make $20 million. There is not a number to me that the Phillies can pay to put Nick Castellanos in right field for Cleveland. There is not a number. Even for free. He had a 90 WRC plus last year. It's better than Adolis Garcia, but guess what? They had the same F4 because Castellanos' defense stinks. It stunk forever. He's a DH. He has been a barely league average hitter since 2022. 95 in 2022, 108 in 23, 104 in 24, 90 in 25. He is going to be 34 in March as well. Again, guys don't get better at that age. This is a guy who chases a ton, whiffs a ton, doesn't walk. Exit velocity's down. Barrel rate's down. Everything has gone into the blue. He chased at a 40% rate. That is John Kenzie Noel territory. There is not enough money, even the whole $20 million. I'm not putting Nick Castellanos in right field. This is the last one I'll give you. the Padres seem to be listening on some of the relievers to add more players. They kind of want to spread the talent around. They want to trade a reliever and try to get back some other pieces. Now, Jeremiah Estrada is the guy I'd be most interested in. They seem to want to trade Mason Miller. I don't see a package for Cleveland that I'd be comfortable trading for Mason Miller. But if they're interested in listening to Jeremiah Estrada, he's got 4 years of control left. His fastball is virtually unhittable. He's got a great splitter. He's got incredible extension, which the Guardians love. He's 27. He's young. You're getting him from the prime of his career. Jeff and I off air kicked around a trade of this: CJ Kafis, Logan Allen, and Cooper Ingle for 4 years of a really good reliever. They might need a little more than that. I don't know if that gets you over the finish line. I don't know if like a Noel or Rodriguez is enough of a piece on the back end to push it. If they want another prospect, you could maybe include Welbin Francisca. I might be willing to also include Jason Churio there if you still have him, even though I traded him away to St. Louis. So Jeremiah Estrada is a name that I would love, and San Diego and Cleveland would love to trade with each other. They seem to value the players similarly, so maybe there's a match there. If they can't find a suitor for Mason Miller, I'm sure they could find interest in Jeremiah Estrada. All right, thank you all for tuning in today on Locked On Guardians. Again, please, in the comments, let me know what you think of my off-season moves. Go ahead and give me yours. Play GM for the day. That's the fun of this, because the Guardians aren't doing anything right now, and we need to make moves for them. I need some trades, and I need some transactions in the dead of winter. So tune in on Friday. Friday will be our next episode. Our cadence is going to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, unless the Guardians finally get off their butts and do something. And then we'll have a Tuesday or Thursday episode if that happens. So tune in on Friday. You'll hear Jeff do the same show I just did. He'll give you his off-season moves. He'll play GM. I know Jeff's got a 3-team trade cooking up you're going to want to hear. So make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Guardians to get all the latest episodes. And hey, you still got time. If Locked On Guardians appeared in your Spotify Wrap this year, prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. If you tag the Locked On Podcast Network on any social media platform, they're going to drop you a code if you give them your Spotify Wrap that Locked On Guardians was on there. You could be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club, and you can get this show ad-free, and you can get exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. All right, everybody else, have a fun, safe week. Cross your fingers for the Guardians to do something, so maybe we'll have a Thursday show. If not, come back on Friday to see Jeff and listen to his off-season moves. Give us yours. In the meantime, stay warm, stay safe, get in the holiday spirit, and go Guardians, go.